Hey, I want to reply to a conference reports video on the concept of God and what good is God, and also at the same time to Professor Anton's reply to to that video. I wrote a bunch of stuff down because there's just a huge um, branching of thought, down different paths, if you want to use that metaphor. Um, and it's just, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So I'm not sure how this is going to go, but I could end up rambling, and you can take your pick as to what you want to reply to, or and maybe I'll find something I want to stick to. But it'll probably be about 10 minutes, I'm guessing. Um, I guess one thing I want to say is just to sort of help uh, Fred, I guess is your name, or to contribute to this discussion, not by so much getting my own ideas about God, etc., out there, but just to sort of to look at what exact just to try to expand on what you seem to be wrestling with. I looked at the number of videos that Conference Report has posted, and there's got to be over 20 on God. And he's sort of you, Fred, have uh, voiced your distress about, here you are thinking about God again, and and Husserl would call this in his later works that I think are still unpublished, um, the generation of a stam, S-T-A-M-M, in German. I forget what the exact translation of that would be, if there is one, but I think it's something like a familiarization, or a normative, a sort of terrain of normativity. It's a place where we repeat things, and in essence, YouTube is becoming a stam for you. It's not just you who is thinking or discussing these topics about God. It's a whole historical background, plus all the historical backgrounds of all the people on YouTube. And what you are essentially doing is constituting or sedimenting or giving density to a stam, which is a place of historical repetition. It's a place where, or something, maybe not necessarily a place, where people come together and they have a sort of, in general, maybe there's just a theme or a genre or a certain style of context where they will come together and where people will come together and repetition happens. So I mean, essentially, a book, a word even or as Professor Anton always says, a bit ambiguously, I think it's interesting, is that a word is a principle of repetition. I also think if you want to say that, it has to be a principle of opposition and a principle of adaptation. And those three have to be in some kind of dynamic operation together. I'm following the sociologist. What was his name? I'm following a French sociologist who wrote a book called The Laws of Society or something. No, he definitely wrote one book called The Laws of Imitation, and in another book it was called The Laws of Society. And the three laws were repetition, adaptation, or rather repetition, opposition, and adaptation. And he makes a pretty good case that this explains a lot in society. And puts it into almost like geometric terms and waves that are sort of propagating, how ideas propagate throughout society. That might be a good way to look at how the idea of God or the concept of God comes about. But I think it's more than a concept, in various societies, or what Husserl would call in various home worlds and versus alien worlds. So what we do is through these places of repetition, I think similar to what Bakhtin had called a chronotope, but different. Anyway, we come to generate these places generation after generation of places and styles of discourse through appropriation and transgression. And that really has to do a lot with what you were talking about as far as threshold concepts. So you can see where I'm just sort of like going and you know, off in all these different branches. But I think what Professor Anton had said was that the problem lies with, or the disposition toward God as a problem is something essentially bound up with those who take a dogmatic stance, one way or the other, on God, on God as whatever you want to call it. And I think that has to do, you know, a lot with, you know, it's not getting us anywhere. It's not producing. It's not getting us toward a threshold concept where we can open up a new terrain of ideas. They're just repeating the same thing and sedimenting the same idea about, you know, I guess there's somebody out there that's called, you know, do not God or something. Yeah, see, I mean, really are just by saying the word God, like pink elephants, as Professor Anton said, you're just sedimenting the same stupid idea over and over again. I mean, obviously God, to get back to what good is God, obviously the idea of God has a, you know, has some truth to it. You know, it's not the objective truth that touch and vision produces, in the sense that it's more like hearing. You know, you have to relate God to hearing. I think a principle of hearing or something like that. I mean, because in vision and touch we get we get objects in nature, in space, and it's necessarily its relations to other things in space. You can't have an object without relations to things in space. But you can still have a perception without objects per se. So you could listen to, I mean, because you know, having an object is all about causality. You could listen to, I'll expand on this. You could listen to music your whole life, and if you were blind, and you'd only, you know, and you might never have any idea about what an instrument is, or a musician, or vibrations in you know, vibrations in the air, which is essentially, you know, sound made visual and tactile. But you'd still have the experience of music, but you would have no idea about its causes, right? So I think God is essentially like is a concept that has to be, or you know, when I say concept, I mean a stand, a principle of socio-historical repeatability, a style of living, essentially a terrain, a terrain that is a principle of opening out onto the world. And I don't mean this in a mystical way. I mean that when you look at a grain of sugar, you see a grain of sugar based, you know, on, you see it's a figure on a background, but it's the horizon of your experiences that recedes in order to, in favor of the object. And so in a sense, because you have this object, because you have this experience of interaction with your body, with sugar, because you know that it dissolves in water and that it's sweet and that it's, you know, great, the way it feels in your hand, it really informs the entire way that you see the grain of sugar. And so, and you might mistake it for a grain of salt, you know, all these things. So that all of your experiences opening up to the figure on the background is your horizon, and that which withdraws in order to let things be revealed and disclosed. And so God is really, I think, a horizon. And you know, the important thing about a horizon is that it's socio-historical. As I mean, you could read. I mean, in Wittgenstein, you could find this. It's socio-historical, and it's non-thematizable. A figure in a background. A figure is, in its essence, I guess, is thematized. It's made into your theme of your attention. Background is thematizable. Now, the difference between theme in the background and on one side and the horizon on the other is that the horizon is not thematizable at all. It's that which always withdraws. So God is, I think, is a way for a community to open out onto the world in their understanding, first and foremost. So you know, lots of ideas. You know, I'm just putting it out there, but enjoy, I guess. But get back to me.